watching StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh Revi, and glad to have with me Vice Admiral Anup Singh. He's a former flag officer commanding in chief Eastern Naval Command and has also served as the Indian Navy's Deputy Chief of Naval Staff and in the Integrated Defense Staff has been a Deputy Chief. Glad to have you on board, sir, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Amitabh. Thank you.
Admiral, just wanted to get your views on the latest US-Maldives Security Cooperation Framework. It focuses on the Indian Ocean region and the Indo-Pacific. They're also going to set up a security dialogue. It's probably the first time that the Maldives is categorically saying that it will work with the US in the Indo-Pacific and the IOR, and by implication, of course, that's keeping China or not giving China any space in that region. Do you see this as very significant, Admiral?
It is very, very significant and very topical. In these times, we couldn't have asked for anything better, and things have changed, including our mindset.
When we're talking about changes, I presume you're talking about the 2013 when India kind of put on the brakes on so far the status of forces agreement that the US had proposed with the Maldives. The whole geopolitical scenario then was different, even though many people had already envisaged it coming to this.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, I have always been of the view that this business of non-alignment 2.0 and beyond was a damp squib, and we were too obsessed with non-alignment. Non-alignment does not mean that you stop looking at mutual cooperation. You stop looking at like-minded countries assisting all those lesser haves where you can provide a lot geographically as well as materially, as we've been doing it to the Maldives. But today, in a situation that has been brewing in this region since the dawn of the new millennium, particularly with respect to China, we knew what is coming. And what has happened immediately after COVID hit Wuhan, insofar as China's initiatives and aggressive attitude in the South China Sea as well as in the Indian Ocean, and particularly in Ladakh, should not have come as a surprise. We knew since 1962 that you could not ever trust China, and I have always been of the view that China only understands the taste of its own medicine. Therefore, actually in 2010, it should have been all right, though I can understand that we were too obsessed with situations where a country, a major power was allowed to have temporary or permanent bases, even if they were temporary military bases. But today, it is just timely, as I said. It is just right.
And again, of course, the political scenario in the Maldives has changed. They had an ex-president who's now in jail on corruption charges, who was tilting towards China. There are reports of even giving a port facility to China. But what's happening with the US now, Admiral? Do you see it like obviously complementing India's defense cooperation with the Maldives, whether it's, the patrolling of the joint patrolling of the economic zone, whether it's military exercises which are institutionalized and other defense cooperation with the Maldives?
Yes, in the past couple of years, in fact, particularly after 2018, when there was a change in the political dispensation in Maldives, there have been more frequent visits by US naval ships into their territory, which has been a welcome change, and we have changed our view of how the situation should actually appear now. This I say particularly because in 2016, the saddest thing that we had always been worried about after the South China Sea happened in the Maldives. This kind of a thing had not even happened in Sri Lanka. I mean, one could, for all practical purposes, they have bought and not leased that island called Fedu Finul. And see the speed with which in the last 4 years the Chinese have started reclaiming land. Even at that time, I had said that the day is not too far when in the name of tourism, they will develop an airstrip. Well, they may not develop an airstrip now, but they are certainly building infrastructure which will be dual use. So that should have raised a lot of alarm a long time ago, 4 years ago. And therefore, it is only right to have this agreement between the United States on defense and security and the Maldives. It will assist more formal defense cooperation, and whether we do just HADR exercises or we do soft appearing military cooperation, it is all right at this moment to send the right kind of loud signals to China.
In terms of signals, I don't quite know what. It seems strange that a U.S. Defense Secretary would have a phone call with the Prime Minister of a neighboring country. I'm referring to Bangladesh and Sheikh Hasina. Big one. Officially, we know that they talked about defense cooperation and other issues, including the Rohingyas and a convict for the assassination of Sheikh Mujibur Rahman, who's in the U.S. But do you see that dovetailing in terms of the whole geopolitical scenario vis-a-vis China as well?
Absolutely. And the next call should be somewhere in Myanmar and a few other countries around us. We have been waiting for this because even though Sheikh Hasina and our party have been very, very good in relations with India ever since she took seat in the last term, but there has been far too much activity, including the sale of two Ming-class submarines, which are based in Chittagong, and now a new base is being developed by the Chinese. Obviously, it will be built by the Chinese for the sake of those submarines. Now, the Ming-class are actually vintage, and that means there are strings attached. That means whether somebody accepts it publicly or not, there must be Chinese experts and technicians and and professionals who will be there. Whether you call them temporary or permanent, one knows that without them things won't work. So, first of all, it was very alarming when we saw a country like Bangladesh, really speaking, does not require submarines. But the fact is that getting submarines which are vintage and which are Chinese should be a bigger alarm for Bangladesh rather than for any other country. So this call and the last agreement with the Maldives between the United States and Maldives, and this call between the Defense Secretary Esper and Sheikh Hasina had one common thread, which I think will spread all across the IOR littoral. Because in both the cases, the formal statement said that we share concerns of security in the region and we are for a free and open Indo-Pacific. That says it all. And Bangladesh, over the last few years, has received so much promise from the Chinese in terms of FDI that they have gone overboard in accepting infrastructure building. Now, all this doesn't come for free. This will all obviously be soft loans, and you know what Chinese soft loans are. They say 2% or 3%, but it's LIBOR plus 2%. That means a lot. You see what has happened in Hambantota because they couldn't even service the debt.
Similar situation in the Maldives also, though they are projecting it as the former president and his administration's corruption as well. Just a final thought, Admiral, on the Indian Navy in the IOR, and especially since we've gone from the west towards the east, and then there is, after the Maldives, there's of course Lakshadweep, then there's Sri Lanka and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. On India countering China in the Indian Ocean region up to the Malacca Straits.
Yes. Once again, we've been crying hoarse that it is not just because people like me have been in white uniform for almost 4 decades, and therefore Navy comes first, the silent and the smallest service. But the fact is, it's we've suffered lack of budgetary support. And in the last couple of years, in fact, the Navy has suffered, along with the other two services, but Navy in particular has suffered even lack of revenues budget support. But if you take away a large chunk of capital support which was coming earlier, you will find it difficult even to service committed liabilities of existing big ticket projects. Uh, then you know that the Indian Navy, like the Army and the Air Force, had till a couple of years ago almost 75% platforms which were supplied by the former Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And they were all legacy platforms in their true sense of being legacy platforms, which means vintage. We have the Indian system of looking after maintenance despite temperature, salinity, humidity, which really bites us in the Indian Ocean region, which requires a lot of maintenance, and therefore we've been trying to keep all those forces through upgrades and through repairs and modifications. But that is not the way a navy is run. Very fortunately, over the last decade and a half, a lot of new acquisitions have come in, but they still do not look after the entire requirement of numbers in the Indian Ocean. Now, I am one of those who started saying a long time ago, yes, technology must must actually supersede the game of numbers. But I also have been saying, while in service, that the Indian Ocean is entirely different from the Atlantic and the Pacific. The Indian Ocean has a roof over its head, which is a very bad thing for a water body. The Indian Ocean has a roof over its head, and apart from that, a total of 9 choke points, which are the only entry and exit points. Therefore, you require numbers to look after also transnational crime like piracy, maritime terrorism, the boat people, people trafficking, and a nexus between pirates and terrorists. So, therefore, we do require numbers. However, uh, between China and India, insofar as the Indian Ocean is concerned, it cannot be just a game of numbers. These are our waters, and fortunately, we've got a peninsular structure of our coastline, which means a
Unfortunately for
large
them, a
number of
tyranny
ports
of
and bays.
geography for us.
Absolutely. So it is unlike the famous book, The Revenge of Geography. I keep saying, look at the advantage of geography insofar as India is concerned. Therefore, logistically, and so far as proximity to the Malacca Straits and the displaced island territories, which were thought as a burden on India in the Andaman Nicobar, are now a strategic advantage. So China does not enjoy that kind of an advantage. The southernmost base in China in Hainan Island is still 5,000 nautical miles away from Djibouti. And even if it had temporary bases in the countries on our periphery, which will not be all that easy, it cannot enjoy the advantage of logistic support that we have in our home port. So sustenance is not going to be easy. Secondly, it cannot send the kind of numbers without logistic support ships to sustain themselves in the Indian Ocean unless they want to enjoy defeat. So the situation over here is entirely different from the situation on land borders. And the best thing today is that we can speak openly and tell them, look, the Malacca dilemma that Hu Jintao spoke of in 2004 is for real. So while we don't say that we are going to blockade an international strait, but it happens to be China's Achilles heel. Secondly, today we possess some assets which have come in from the West in particular, which are so good that nobody goes unchecked. Apart from the fact that we have set up radar chains all indigenously, radar and surveillance chains, not only in the Andaman Nicobar Islands and on the peninsula, but also in some bordering countries like Sri Lanka, Maldives, and now in Seychelles. So China is not going to have an easy ride if it comes into the Indian Ocean to just do strategic show off with its aircraft carrier, which actually is not fully an offensive attack.
Admiral Anup Singh, absolutely enjoyed this chat. Thank you so much for your insights.
Thank you very much.
And you can get all the latest news and analysis on our website. And if you do like these kind of videos, just press on the bell icon on YouTube to get notifications. You can also support our initiative on StratNews Global. I'm Amitabh.